My sister, who's now 27, had a son when she was 18 or 19. At that time, she was in a relationship that, to put it mildly, was a bit complicated. Let's just say it was with someone she shouldn't have been involved with. Someone for whom an unplanned pregnancy could have wrecked his life in ways you wouldn't believe. When she found out she was pregnant, she was under a lot of pressure to get an A, or put the baby up for adoption. But my sister refused to do either, wanting to raise her son herself, no matter how hard it might be. To make matters even more complicated, our stepdad was furious when he found out, and even threatened to kick her out. She was struggling, trying to figure out how she'd support herself and her baby. But then the guy she'd been seeing offered her a way out. He would pay her a large amount of money, essentially lifelong child support, to keep his identity a secret. And I mean, this guy gives her a lot of money, enough that she's able to support her son comfortably. She still works, but she's got a substantial amount in savings. Barely any student loans, and she's able to give her son things without worrying about every cent, like a Switch, trips, a trust fund waiting for him when he turns 25. The works. I'm not supposed to know any of this, of course, but my sister's let bits and pieces slip over the years, and I eventually pieced it all together. Plus, I met the guy back when they were together, so I knew enough to connect the dots. One day, I confronted her about it, asking directly if my suspicions were true, and she admitted that I was right. She told me that it wasn't my business, and she had everything under control, and we never discussed it again. Until recently. Fast forward to now. My nephew is 7 years old, and he's starting to ask questions about his father. He's a smart, observant kid, and he's noticed that he's missing a piece of his family tree. Recently, I was babysitting him, and we were watching a movie where the main character finds her dad after years of not knowing him. It clearly struck a chord with him, because he turned to me and asked if I knew his dad or had ever met him. In that moment, I froze. I lied and said, "I don't know who your dad is." But the question left me feeling uneasy, especially since I knew the truth. My sister has always told him that she doesn't know who his dad is, but it felt wrong to sit there, looking into his curious little face, and deny him something so important. It's his father, after all, and I feel like he has a right to know the truth, even if that truth is complicated. So I told my sister about what happened, and said I thought it was time she told my nephew who his dad was. If she wouldn't, then I would. She got defensive immediately, telling me that she had everything planned, and that she was going to tell him when he turned 18, but not a day before. I argued that making him wait 11 years was unfair, especially if he was already asking questions. She insisted that nothing good would come from him knowing now, and that she had her reasons. When I pressed, she pointed out that revealing his dad's identity could lead to legal trouble for her, especially if there was a legitimate contract involved. Our mom, surprisingly, is siding with my sister. She thinks that I need to stay out of it, that it's my sister's decision, and that telling him could backfire in ways I'm not considering. She says he's a kid and he'll get over it, but I can't shake the feeling that he deserves to know where he comes from, especially if he's curious now. So am I the a-hole for wanting to tell him? Would I be the a-hole if I went against my sister's wishes and told my nephew who his dad is? Update. First, I want to thank everyone who commented. Reading through all the advice and perspectives really helped me see things from multiple angles. Many of you made me question if I should leave it alone. But ultimately, my nephew's curiosity and his right to know won out. I decided to tell him the truth, even though I knew it could have serious consequences. I thought that maybe, if he knew the truth, it could give him some sense of closure to help him understand his family in a way he couldn't if he was left wondering. Here's how it went down. The next time I was babysitting him, he asked me again about his dad. I felt a surge of nerves, but kept my tone calm. I asked him if he'd want to meet his dad someday, and his face lit up with hope and curiosity. I told him as gently as I could that I knew who his dad was, and that his dad cared about him, but couldn't be involved openly because of some grown-up issues. I didn't go into all the messy details. He's still only 7 after all. But I told him enough to understand that his dad was real, and he wasn't some mystery floating around in the background. My nephew, naturally, wanted more information. He wanted a name, a picture, everything. I was hesitant, but seeing how much it meant to him, I gave in and told him his dad's name. I expected him to be satisfied with that, but this is where things got out of hand. Apparently, my nephew went straight to my sister the next morning and asked about his dad again, this time using the name I'd given him. My sister, as you can imagine, was furious. She immediately knew I had told him, and she called me in a rage, saying I'd broken her trust and put them both at risk. But it didn't end there. My nephew, being a smart kid, somehow found his dad's contact info, likely through social media, which I hadn't even thought about. He sent his dad a message, and to everyone's shock, his dad actually responded. My sister freaked out completely when she found out, calling me to say I had ruined everything and that now her ex was panicking. Apparently, he never wanted any involvement and felt like this would end up blowing his life apart. The guy threatened legal action to keep my sister quiet and tried to sever all contact with my nephew, who was now heartbroken. My sister was scrambling to keep things under control. Our mom was furious with me, and my nephew was devastated, confused, and angry at being shut down after initially finding out who his dad was. Now, I'm left wondering if I was in the wrong after all. Yes, he has a right to know, but was I right to go against his mother's wishes and tell him? Watching my nephew struggle with the rejection, my sister scramble to keep things stable, and my mom treat me like I'm the villain, has made me wonder if I didn't make a horrible mistake. I get that OP cares about her nephew and wants him to have answers, but this wasn't OP's place to reveal. OP dropped a massive truth bomb on a child without any preparation or regard for the bigger picture. OP's sister had a plan for a reason. There are legal and financial implications here, not to mention the emotional fallout. By telling him without considering these things, OP has possibly endangered a carefully constructed arrangement and put OP's nephew in an even more confusing, painful situation. Maybe he has a right to know, but that decision wasn't OP's to make. And now let's hear the community's opinion on the matter. I can see why you felt the need to tell him. At 7, he's smart enough to know something's off, and hiding his dad's identity probably feels like a betrayal to him. The poor kid deserves to understand where he comes from. But it's a shame things turned out this way. It sounds like his dad was only interested in keeping this secret, and the rejection must be heartbreaking for your nephew. Maybe your sister should have been more transparent with him all along, so he wouldn't feel so blindsided now. This situation might be a wake-up call for her to rethink how she's handling things going forward. Soft, you're the a-hole. I understand that you had good intentions and wanted to give your nephew the closure he's been seeking. However, revealing such a huge part of his life without discussing it with his mother first was risky and had serious consequences. Kids don't have the tools to deal with this type of rejection, and by telling him before your sister was ready, you might have added to his confusion and pain. This wasn't just about him meeting his dad, it was about the complicated agreements between adults, and unfortunately, your actions may have made things worse for everyone involved. Not the a-hole. I honestly believe kids deserve to know the truth about where they come from, especially if they're old enough to start asking questions. Keeping a huge part of his identity from him because it's inconvenient or risky for the adults just isn't right. It's sad that things blew up the way they did, but maybe this is a sign that hiding his father's identity forever isn't the answer. Kids are resilient, and your nephew will be too. But the adults in his life need to face the reality of his father's existence rather than bury it. I, 26 female, and my fiancé, 27 male, are planning our big day, summer 2021. He wanted to ask his best friend John, 27 male, to be best man, and I vetoed it. John dated my sister, 28 female, back in college. It's how I met my fiancé, and they ended it on a pretty bad note. My sister is maid of honor, and I didn't want there to be any tension at the altar, and my fiancé understood that, and John was cool with it. I just didn't want any drama. Last Friday, my sister was over visiting me, fiancé was working, and she said, "I heard John's going to be at the wedding. I don't think I want to go with him there." And although I can understand why my fiancé wanted John to be there, I wanted my sister there even more. So I assured her that I would talk to my fiancé about this. Later, when fiancé came home, I sat down and talked about the previous discussion I had with my sister. And to say the least, he is not okay with it. Saying stuff like, first not the best man, fine, not a groomsman, okay whatever. But now he can't even be at the wedding? No. I told him I'd rather have my sister than John, a person that isn't even related to you at the wedding, and I pleaded he would at least hear me out. He didn't. He left the house and had been crashing at John's place since. I don't know. Am I an a-hole here? Like, it makes sense to me. Blood sister outweighs best friends, right? Just wanted some outside perspective from internet strangers. I hate airing drama to people I actually know. Am I the a-hole? Yes, the a-hole. Unless John did something criminal to your sister, you should blame her for not putting you first at your wedding. Because right now, you aren't putting your sister over John. You're putting your sister before your fiancé. Nothing criminal that I'm aware of. Unless cheating is criminal, then John would still be in the clear there. I don't know. I just would rather my sister than a best friend, since family is forever, right? To give more context about that, my sister cheated on John, and he ended it. My sister says it's just too awkward to be around him, which I can understand. I don't think they would actually fight each other. The last time they were in the same room, a barbecue we had before virus, they just stayed polar opposite of each other. But I want my sister to be there for me, and I didn't think uninviting John would cause fiancé to react how he's reacting. Your family member is threatening not to come to her own sister's wedding because she doesn't want to deal with the awkwardness of being around a man that she cheated on years ago. Why are you even trying to make this sacrifice for her? Why should three people who have done nothing wrong take the hit for someone who is being this unreasonable? You and your sister are the a-holes. It's clear neither of you like John. You even put quotes around best friend, even though the man you want to marry wanted him by his side at the altar. His reaction seems totally justified. He was super flexible, moved John to the audience instead of best man or even groomsman, only to be told, nah, that's not enough. You need to give up more for me. I'm 24, getting married in March next year. My younger brother is 20. We never got along until recent years, and it's still a bit rocky due to him being an ex-D addict and now an alcoholic. 6 months ago, he totaled his truck due to reasons unknown to us. He says the brakes were going out and finally quit when he was taking a corner. At the same time, I had gotten a real good deal on a car at the dealership I go to, but I already had a car loan and didn't really want to take on the extra payments. I was talking to him about it a few days after his crash. He said he really needed a new car and offered to take over my payments and I could get the new car. Now, at this point, I did have enough money to cover both, and I know he isn't as financially stable or able as I. I considered the deal and eventually accepted, under the preface that if he ever got into financial trouble, to let me know before anything, because I could handle paying the payment on both cars for a few months if absolutely necessary. He told me he was all good, working more than usual and earning more spending money. Fast forward to last week. My older brother called to ask if I checked out Original Brothers' new car yet. What the duck? Call him up. Says he ended up getting his girlfriend's grandparents to give him a down payment and co-signature on a brand new truck. Okay, cool. But what about the payments on the car I gave him? Turns out, according to my original loaners, he hadn't made a single payment since I gave him the car and was $1,700 in the hole. They were sending it to collections and attempting to repossess it unless I got them $1,500 up front. Now, the money isn't a big deal to me. I put up the money to cover it, and the other brother wants it. But that's a story for another day. The issue for me is I am so close to being married, buying my first house, and starting my life, and he had no issue with letting my credit get rocked for the $8,000 left on the car and not saying anything to me about it. He was 100% willing to continue on with letting the car get repossessed without even calling or sending a warning text to me. I've lost all respect and trust for the kid. I'm definitely not allowing him to be a groomsman anymore, which sucks because I thought it would help us bond. But I'm also considering just not inviting him whatsoever. So, am I the a-hole, or would I be for not inviting him or making him a groomsman? Not the a-hole. If he doesn't respect you, he doesn't deserve to be treated with respect or invited to, possibly, your biggest event ever. Not the a-hole. He was totally out of line, and you need to make that clear to him. He should apologize. You can even revoke his groomsman position as you've lost trust in him. But don't tell him he's not invited to the wedding. March is still a few months off, and that's not something you can take back and could also cause other friction in the family. If he continues to be the a-hole over the next couple of months, then you can reconsider. But make sure you make the decision with a cool head and not a knee-jerk reaction. Let this be a lesson to you. Don't trust people to make payments on something that your name is on. Next time, refinance the car out of your name and into the other person's name. Your bro is definitely an a-hole, but you should not have given him your car in the first place. The purchase of your home may now be delayed because of this too. Edit. Just wanted to add the fact that I was able to save this from impacting my credit, as it's in-house and they never reported, and I talked with the lot owner to make sure it doesn't go into collections. Bad decision on my end credit-wise, but I came out of it so far unscathed. Edit 2. I think I'll allow him to show up. If he can afford to drive here without me helping. Just no involvement in the wedding. Also, this wasn't about money, but more about trust. So, this scar I have is 14 years old. When I was 12, I fell and smashed my face on a load of rocks and broke my 2 front teeth. I had multiple surgeries between the ages of 12 and 18 to reconstruct my teeth, gum, and lip. I still have light scars on my lip and chin, but all the doctors and dentists, absolute saints, did such a fantastic job that unless I point it out or have a tan, you can barely notice them. A few months after my accident, and after my first 2 surgeries, my aunt got married. She didn't want me in any of her photos in case they looked bad. She didn't want them ruined. My dad can be a right gobby bastard, and told her to stop being so superficial, or our whole family will leave, and we wouldn't speak to them again because of how she was treating me and my scars. Something I couldn't help. She had 1 photo with me in it, but I'm at the back behind my other cousins. Her daughter, we'll call her X, and her friend then picked on me the whole night because of the scars. The scars have faded well over time, and even I sometimes forget they're there. My fiancé didn't even notice them until after he proposed. But despite this, at my cousin's wedding, my aunt asked me if I wore a lot of makeup to hide them from my fiancé. Excuse me? Her jerk daughter X caught the bouquet, snatched it off the girl who caught it, and started yelling, "I caught the bouquet!" My aunt then came up to me and said, "Looks like X will be getting married before you after all." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I have a ring. Where's X's boyfriend?" "Oh yeah, she doesn't have one." Am I the a-hole for snapping here? But only last week I was talking to all of my aunts about my wedding plans. My favorite aunt is making our cake and singing while we signed the register. But which aunt said I should get cosmetic surgery to hide my scars so I won't ruin my own wedding photos? I told her to duck off and forget about an invite unless she comes groveling back to me and apologizes. My nice aunt said I shouldn't have snapped so viciously, and my mom said I shouldn't have cut her from the guest list so quickly, as which aunt is going through some stuff right now. That side of the family is making me feel real guilty about it. Dad just likes the prospect of her not being there. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Sounds like your aunt has been going through some stuff for 14 years. I believe it's called being a stanky a-hole. Not the a-hole. Who cares what she's going through right now? She has been picking on you about that since you were a child and allowing her children to join in. Neither her nor her daughter should be getting an invite. Even if they apologize, it will only be fake to get the invite. Not the a-hole at all. She absolutely owes you an apology. She wouldn't be at my wedding either. Your mom and nice aunt need to have a good long talk with witch aunt, and to make sure she understands what she's done wrong, and to apologize sincerely to you if they want her at the wedding. I, 51 female, have 2 brothers. OB, 54 male, and YB, 49 male. Dad died a year after Mom. He had a will, which divided his estate into 4 parts. Kids to get 1/4, 4 grandkids splitting 1/4. OB as executor. The grandkids are mine, 9 and 12, OB's daughter, 21, and YB's son, 15. He also left a cash fund to be used by all until the rest was settled. We did use some of that. My parents were well off. The value of their house is about $800K to $1 million. Dad treasured his family. When OB needed a home, my dad built a suite for them. When OB was ready to buy, my folks sold their house to them and bought the place next door. My dad helped me out too, with debt, and paid for most of my wedding. OB now runs my dad's contracting business. OB asked that we wait so he could get a mortgage to buy Dad's house. OB made a deal with YB for his share. That seemed odd to me, as the estate hadn't even been assessed yet, but it was between them. The rest of us agreed to wait. After 6 months of no news, I contacted OB and asked what was happening. He said there was trouble getting the mortgage. Just be patient. I contacted a lawyer to review that everything was proceeding as it should, that all assessments were being done, etc. OB was pissed, thought it was a waste of money when he could handle things just fine. He reluctantly hired a lawyer himself to help sort things out. OB had his lawyer send a heavily redacted financial statement that showed Dad had 0 assets besides the house. They had taken $100K to pay for my niece's wedding, which they said Dad was going to do. Then sister-in-law posted on social media about $50,000 RV they had bought, that they were doing some renovations on Dad's house to prepare for moving in. About 18 months after Dad died. They didn't have a mortgage, hadn't asked if they were permitted to renovate or move in before the estate was settled, never talked to me or our lawyer directly. Sister-in-law sent me an angry email saying I was K-ing my brother, who was working hard and suffering from depression. Then my OB called me, crying and appealing to my sense of family and telling me he would get everything done with his lawyer, even though it cost money. OB has health issues. Sister-in-law is disabled. They have large debts. I told him I can't talk about the inheritance, but I wasn't going to disown him as my brother. I needed to be sorted out legally and properly. We stopped talking. He still hasn't sent the paperwork through his lawyer. It is now 4 years. We gave the go-ahead to sue OB over the estate. My dad would have absolutely hated this. He hated lawyers and never wanted us to fight over money from inheritance. I feel like I gave him the opportunity to settle this, but carelessly or deliberately, he bungled it. Not the a-hole, but it sounds like your family will likely never forgive you. Honestly, they've been really shady, so I don't know if that's something you even care about anymore. Not the a-hole. Your brother is 100% stealing from the estate, as they already had before it was settled. Your dad wouldn't like him stealing either. Unfortunately, money seems to always bring out the worst in people. He's had 4 years. He cares more about the money than his family. Sue him. He's not doing right by your father's wishes. Not the a-hole. Your brother has stolen at least $100,000 from the estate. Hire an estate attorney. File in court to force the proceeding of your dad's will. File for theft charges if your brother took money from the estate to which he wasn't entitled. Have the estate evict them if they are living in the house. Backstory. I'm a cosmetologist and have been dyeing my hair with the 1N, darkest black they sell, for 1.5 years. Black is hard to get out of hair. My sister is getting married and asked me to change my hair color to our natural color, dark brown. My sister and I have been going to the same hairdresser for 13 years. I told my sister that I honestly couldn't afford to change my hair back to brown because I knew it would be a couple $100s. I also didn't want to because I feel a lot more comfortable with my black hair. My sister has already started her career and makes a lot more money than I do, so she offered to pay for me to get my hair fixed and booked me the appointment herself. Our hairdresser told her it would be a color correction at $90 an hour and would probably take 4 hours. My sister agreed to this and told her that if it took longer, that was fine. She just wanted it to look nice for the wedding. The day of the appointment, the hairdresser texts me and says her coworker is going to help with it, since she squeezed me in for the appointment. I go to get my hair done, and it takes 4 hours. My hairdresser passes me the iPad, and I put in my sister's credit card to pay $550, including tip. Sister told me it was okay to give her 20% before I went. I got up to leave, and my hairdresser hands me another iPad and says, "This is for her coworker. It's for the product and stuff." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I started putting in the credit card info again, and before I pressed submit, I asked how much it was since they never told me. It was $750. I asked why, and she said it was her hourly rate and the price of the product. I started crying, pressed submit on the card, and left to my car and immediately called my sister. My sister told me to calm down and it would be okay and not to worry about it, and that she would call our hairdresser tomorrow to get this figured out, since after tips it was $1,500. My friends are all saying I should have refused to pay, not tipped or argued about the price. I wanted to say something so bad, but I was on the verge of a panic attack and I didn't know what to do. Edit. I'm paying my sister back as much as possible over the next few months, but the initial charge on her credit card is what I feel awful about. Wait, so the hairdresser quoted $90 per hour for 4 hours of work, and then hit you with a $1,500 bill? You can go silver from black for that cost, not the a-hole. Everyone sucks here, except sister, but you're not an a-hole. You were just wrong in this situation, which is what a-hole means in this forum. The hairdresser has no business changing the price so much after the work was done. Also, this was rather high pressure and a big surprise. That said, you are spending your sister's money. You have her card. You're responsible for it. And I'd say this is a violation of the responsibility you took by taking the card. I know it's easy to say now. You could have called your sister. And at the time and situation, it's difficult to fulfill your duty with another person's finances. But you did make a mistake here. Your sister sounds awesome, by the way. I like that she was comforting you and taking responsibility for fixing your mistake.